Hey, this is Big Guy DIY Robert coming to you with another repair. Excuse me. This is a friend of mine who's going to be selling his boat. He really doesn't utilize it at all. Actually, the boat hasn't been in the water for 2 years. So he asked me to clean it up and get it ready, and as upon taking delivery of the boat to my house to work on it, I noticed the brakes were not releasing coming down a long hill, and I suddenly got a huge whiff of smell of burning brakes. So let me turn this around, show you the boat. So my first part on this project was cleaning this entire drive down, sanding it down. Some parts I even brought it down to the bare aluminum and repainting it. So now it's drying. I got about 3 coats on here, including aluminum primer. I've already compounded the side of the boat. This was oxidized pretty badly. Actually, I'll show you the left side of the boat. You can see the white. That's oxidation. What happens is, as gel coat sits on a boat, it dries, just like your skin on your body. It begins to dry, and if you don't introduce lubricants, which is your wax, this all turns to white. And so you have to use a special compounder or a special compound with wax built into it to try to get the wax to get back into that gel coat to bring the shine back and the color. This is the wheel I am going to be pulling off and showing you. It is, which I was surprised, this has disc brakes. They're not drum brakes. Most trailers that are carrying a heavy load are usually drum brakes, just because drum brakes can take a heck of a beating when trailering. You'll usually find drum brakes on heavy equipment such as construction equipment, even trailers as semis. Their brakes are usually drum, as well as the semi trucks themselves. You will not find drum brakes really in new automobiles. Everything is disc because it's a lighter vehicle. It's also easier maintenance. That's the advantage of disc brakes. They can still stop, but the maintenance is a lot easier than a drum brake. Because a drum brake, if a pad does not release and the drum keeps spinning, it eventually creates a groove into the drum. And when it comes time to remove that drum, you're going to struggle like crazy because the pad is sitting up inside that groove. So it's a little more difficult. But on this boat, it has disc brakes. Now, one thing about when you're jacking a boat trailer up, there are tricks to it, because single axle or double axle, a trailer really only has 3 contact points on the ground. If you jack up one contact point, one of the other contact points will lift. So if you're jacking a trailer up by the frame right here, what happens is the tongue lifts. Now, if the tongue is attached to a vehicle, which is usually the best idea, then you'll be able to jack this side of the trailer frame up. Now, the workaround, or the trick to getting around of not having this tongue go up, is to get your jack under the axle and lift as close as you can to the tire. If you can jack the axle up, and this goes for dual axle and single axle trailers, you will be able to get this side up without your tongue lifting. If your tongue keeps lifting, then you're going to have to hook it up to your truck and then work on this. So I have it up in the air right now. This tire, as you can see, does not want to spin because the brakes are on. So we're going to take the tire off and start looking at the brakes and trying to get these things to loosen up. So let me get my air compressor set up and start on this. Here's a funny story before I remove this. I had to get my tires replaced on my Ford, and when I do lug nuts, my original air gun goes up to 450 pounds per square foot. Well, 450 pounds, yeah, of pressure for tightening the lugs. Foot per pounds, I think it is. And then I would hand tighten them using a breaker bar, extended breaker bar, and tighten them. Well, when the garage had to change my tires, they couldn't get the lug nuts off because I do it too tight. They end up using a pneumatic air gun. There's a pneumatic air gun of 1,000 foot-pounds of pressure to break what I had done. Some of the other lug nuts, they had to use breaker bars to undo it. So the guy who owns the garage, who's also a friend of mine, complained. He says, you have to stop tightening it by hand because you're too strong. So I went out and bought a new pneumatic air gun. This one is 750 pounds per square inch for pressure. So I just use this to tighten all my lug nuts. I don't tighten them by hand anymore. So no one's complained yet. This one here is bought at Home Depot. Price, I think, was, I got it on sale for, I think, around $110. But don't quote me on that one. It might be a little more. But it's been a great gun. I really like it. You notice I don't have to use a breaker bar to loosen these nuts up. All these axles come with a greaser in here, so I've already gone through and re-greased it. This trailer gets very little mileage put on it because the boat was trailered from his house to the marina, and then the trailer was parked, and then from the marina back to his house, and that's it. It was never trailered around long distances. So caliper, let's see if I can get this a wider angle. Caliper on a trailer is similar to a caliper on an automobile, but also not similar. We still have our mounting screw here for the entire caliper on the back side. It doesn't have the float per se. The float is actually, oh no, it does. So the float is built into this part, but you can see the dust or the rust here. So this is not squeezing. So I'm going to remove this whole caliper off and just start lubricating it and see what I need to fix in here. This caliper is not controlled by electric brakes, but is surge brakes, which means in the nose of the trailer you have a reservoir right here. This is the cap to the reservoir, I don't know if no. I'll have to take a wrench to that or something, get that open and check the fluids. But inside here, the nose here, as pressure is applied to the back as the boat's pushing forward against the truck as you come to the stop, that pressure is hydraulic and applies pressure to your brakes. And it's just the front axles that have brakes on this. I don't believe, nope, I stand corrected. Rear axle has brakes too. So it applies pressure to these calipers because of pressure from the tongue itself, and that's how the brakes work. There are also electric brakes, but I would never get electric brakes on a boat trailer. That's kind of stupid. You're backing something into water, and if you have a open wire on electric brakes, that'll short out your whole truck and even screw up your computer in the truck. So let me get some tools and we will take this caliper off, but I want to show a close-up of it so you can get a good view of what this looks like. These are your bleed screws here and here. So I got this loosened up. That's your reservoir. That's your brake fluid right there. So I'm a little low, but not dangerously low, so we're going to add some fluid in there. Upper and lower are identical, so something to know, take notice of. Oh, need a pry bar. Interesting. I don't know if you could see it. Let's see here. Yeah. There's a spring. The back side of this pad, the spring goes inside the caliper. I'm trying to push that back in so I can remove this brake pad first. And then I'll be able to get this other brake pad with the spring off. This one has a spring on the back side. There. That's the spring. All right, look at this. Boy, this brake is much simpler than a automobile brake. So your slides are here on this part and this part. That's your hydraulic caliper there that closes in on the brake pad. Other than that, there's nothing to lubricate here. So what I'm really going to do is I'm just going to put some grease around this caliper part. Right here is a rubber boot. All calipers have these, but this here is a rubber boot. I'm just going to push this boot back with a screwdriver. It's in a lip, as you can see. It sits inside the lip. I'm going to peel that back with a screwdriver, put a little grease in there, and then squeeze this with a C-clamp. So I'm pushing this back into the housing itself. So let me go get a C-clamp and some waterproof grease. Before we continue with this video, this is an interruption. I lost the other half of the video. So what I did is I took everything apart again 4 days later to show you how I put this back together and what I'm doing. So you'll notice I've already greased all this stuff because I had it together there 4 days ago, and then when I went to do editing I realized I lost the other half. So we're going to do this all over again. So I don't remember exactly where I left off on the video, but I had a tub of grease, and I greased the inside of this caliper because when the brake pad goes in, those springs slide in there and you want them to be able to slide. I also greased the outside of this caliper. So this part is all set. Using anti-seize, I put anti-seize all around the hub. So when we put the disc brake on, it will not stick to the hub, even with it. This anti-seize grease is not going to wash off with salt water or fresh water. So it'll prevent this from actually rusting to the hub. So next, we're going to put our pads back in. The pads, I used anti-seize on the back. You can see what this spring looks like. Be sure not to get any of the anti-seize on the brake pad itself. This pad also, anti-seize is all over it. Our pads are in. And one thing I didn't show you on here is I had a C-clamp. I put a board in here, piece of wood, and then the C-clamp closed this caliper into the housing itself, into the caliper housing. So that way when I go to put this entire brake back on, I'll be able to put it on easily over the disc. Like so. If you don't compress this back into the housing, you will most likely have trouble getting your caliper back on over the disc. As for the bolts that hold the caliper onto the housing, this is my grease. It's a slide grease specifically for this. So you want to apply this relatively thick. And you're going to do your top one first. Grab the bottom one, again, lubricate it quite generously. And I just do these bolts that hold your caliper in the caliper housing. I just do them really snug. Not super tight, but really snug. There we go. So everything's moving like it's supposed to. Anti-seize I had already put on the disc brake, or on the disc beforehand. I had already put anti-seize on my studs. Reconnect your wheel to your hub. Go in a star pattern, so here to here, or here to here. Then go from here, across, and across. And that's how you do a caliper on a surge brake on a trailer. Surge brakes are used on a variety of trailers, not just boat trailers, but it's most common on boat trailers. I have a utility trailer, which you've seen in other videos, that's electric brakes. And then my boat trailer has no brakes because the boat's under a certain weight. So overall it'll probably take you about 20 minutes per caliper or per wheel, depending of course on the tools that you have. But I was able to knock off all 4 calipers in about an hour, a little over an hour, hour and a half. Very simple. 7/16 wrench was used to take the bolts to remove the caliper, but it's different on all trailers depending on where they're manufactured, what they use for parts. So give me a thumbs up if this helped. If you had any questions at all, put them in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. This is Big Guy DIY Robert signing off. Have a good one. Safe boating.